The world of science fiction has truly blessed us with some of the most iconic villains in cinematic history. Right from the daunting Xenomorphs to the terrorizing predators, we have a very long list. Today, when we look at these villains, it's pretty hard to picture them otherwise, and truth be told, it's their ominous appearances which unreservedly work wonders on their part. So, if we ask you to visualize the same beings in entirely different forms, would you be able to do that? We know the answer is that it's going to be quite difficult, but then again, in the field of movies, the creative process often calls for exploring multiple paths before deciding on the best and final look. Well, all of that brings us to the main content of today's video, where our focus will be on the exceedingly hostile, shape-shifting, telepathic, extraterrestrial life form, otherwise known as the Thing. But here's the catch. We're not going to be talking about Rob Bottin's design today. Way before Bottin took the reins to bring the alien to life, somebody else was associated with the project. We're talking about the late effects artist Dale Kypers, and in today's video, we're going to explore his early iteration of the Thing. Are you ready to embark on this journey with us? If so, gear up to get your mind blown away. That said, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we do have one quick request. If you enjoy our content, then please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot, so thank you. Now, let's begin. Some might say that the shape-shifting alien parasite, which serves as the titular antagonist in John Carpenter's 1982 sci-fi horror film, is hands down one of the most complicated monsters in the genre's history. But then again, it could have been a lot more complicated. You see, the Thing was a very different antagonist in the early versions of Carpenter's movie, given that it was initially envisioned by Wisconsin-based artist Dale Kypers. After a startling turn of events involving a physical assault that had nothing to do with the film's development, Kypers ended up in the hospital and had no chance to go back and work on the movie. Of course, those who were involved in the project after Kypers did claim that they retired his designs out of respect for him rather than because they didn't like them. Kypers, regrettably, wasn't pleased by this at all and lived for the rest of his life publicly bitter that his vision had been abandoned. With that said, let's take a closer look at Kypers' concept art and model designs now. Back when Kypers was part of the project, the idea that the creature could pass for anyone or anything was already a major plot point. However, Kypers also believed that it required a true form, one that was sufficiently vulnerable to give viewers hope for the humans, simultaneously heightening the suspense factor of the movie. Kypers thought of a small, circular, arthropod-like shape that looked a lot like a floating head and had long crustacean-like legs. The creature's main body would contain fluid that it could shape into any extra limbs or tissue it needed. In fact, it was so flexible that it could even grow a whole body around itself in any form one could possibly think of, or it could merge itself into the body of another creature and wait as a parasite until it was ready to attack. The goal was to provide the audience with a concrete enemy that would be feared and potentially defeated as well. Therefore, Kypers made this design choice because he thought that the spectators needed something real to focus their fear on instead of having an abstract concept of an infection that could be anyone or anything. Back at the time, John Carpenter had some specifications for the Thing, since he had explicitly asked for a creature with no earthly means of mobility, and this had Kypers coming up with an entity that could move in a way that just wouldn't work in real life. Kypers created an entity completely covered in what he called projection tubes, from which the monster would constantly spurt a web of light-propelled pseudopods. These energy beams consisted of a living tissue core and would solidify into steel-strength structures before dissolving to powder in the next instant. This unique method of mobility created a constantly changing frame that kept the creature off the ground while dissolving and also reforming quickly enough to accelerate it at breakneck speed. Well, of course, this had people wondering how this would be achieved on film. Some actually thought the web would have been an animation effect, something that would resemble a field of crackling energy bolts bonding the entity to the architecture around it. Others thought it would require innovative combinations of animation and practical effects. So it's only fitting to admit that the technical challenges of creating a truly alien and otherworldly appearance, one that principally defied conventional biological understanding, would have been immense. But moving on, as per Kypers' notes, the eyes of the creature were actually meant to be solar collectors that absorbed all forms of energy to power its multi-viscous life fluid. Of course, Kypers' vision certainly didn't end there. You see, Kypers' early vision of the Thing also had the ability to function as an illusionist in addition to its shape-shifting capabilities. Allow us to elucidate here. You already know that the Thing is capable capable of changing shape and disguising itself as anything imaginable, but what makes it an illusionist is its additional power to be able to change other beings' views in ways that are impossible to tell apart from reality. Naturally, this creates a situation where victims would undergo what seemed to be some kind of a ghostly haunting, in which friends would turn into monsters and the surroundings would change in ways that were unimaginable and confusing. Now, the genius of this approach lies in its psychological complexity. While some of the horrifying visions would be mere illusions, others would actually represent the genuine physical threat of the creature itself. Victims would be trapped within the thing's funhouse of nightmarish hallucinations, never knowing which threats were real and which were psychological manipulation. And to top it all off, the thing, which was truly capable of touching and killing you, could be hiding anywhere in its own created maze of terror. Moving on, Kypers had also developed a detailed history for his depiction of the thing that positioned it as a calculated and planned bioweapon produced by a highly evolved galactic society. As per Kypers' idea, the creature was a hybrid creation designed by a peaceful species that aimed to populate other worlds without resorting to warfare. They created the thing as a viral virus that would infect large populations and cause a global genocide, paving the path for bloodless dominance instead of employing military force. Depending on the circumstances they faced, these eradicators met varying ends after being sent to numerous worlds across the galaxy. The specimen that came to Earth landed in the Antarctic wastes only to become frozen in a lake of moving ice. It stayed that way for about 4,000 years, alive but frozen. This backstory, in our opinion, did give the horror a cosmic scale that would have linked the thing to bigger science fiction themes like interstellar colonization and ensuring the survival of the species. Now, to those of you thinking that Kypers' concepts were just theoretical drawings at the end of the day, mark our words when we tell you that Kypers' early representation of the thing also featured intricate physical models that demonstrated the creature's intended size as well as presence. The models included several articulated limbs that ended in claw-like appendages, giving the distinctive floating head look. These models were placed right next to small toy soldiers to convey the creature's massive size and the danger it would pose to human beings. Kypers' dedication to producing a creature that would have realistic weight and presence on screen was pretty much evident in the craftsmanship of these models. While the detailed head structure promised sophisticated facial animation possibilities, the movable limbs suggested complex puppetry requirements. The model's usage of a variety of textures and materials also demonstrated an awareness of how various surfaces would affect lighting and camera work while filming. Now, as we close in on the end of our video, we'd like to point out that the transition from Dale Kypers' vision to Rob Bottin's final design for the thing mainly occurred due to circumstances beyond creative differences. We already mentioned before that Kypers was hospitalized following a tragic accident, which made it impossible for him to continue with the project. Rather than expressing dissatisfaction with his designs, the production team chose to retire them out of respect for Kypers' situation. Now, this decision, despite being well-intentioned, left Kypers feeling resentful that his vision was never realized, and he chose to remain openly disappointed about the abandonment of his concepts for the remaining part of his life. The philosophical differences between Kypers' approach and the final film's direction reflected deeper questions about horror storytelling and audience psychology. Kypers always believed that his creature, with its definitive form and understandable flaws, would have provided the audience with hope and increased excitement by raising the prospect of success. It's quite understandable why Kypers firmly felt that the shapeless, infectious entity that took the place of his design was both confusing and senseless, and he entirely blamed the final design choice for the thing's initial box office failure. Marvelous verdict! Well, that's all we have for you today, and with that, we've finally come to the end of our video. So, what are your thoughts on Dale Kypers' early version of the thing? Do you think you would have liked the whole idea of the thing being an alien bioweapon, one that would attach itself to a victim's head and stab a million hair-like needles into their brain until it learned how to make a copy of its unwilling host? Would you have preferred it to the version we got, and do you think audiences would have been more receptive to it when it released? Let us know your thoughts on this movie monster redesign in the comments section down below, and also stay tuned as we promise to be back with more exciting content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.